Hey, Marcus House with you here. Today we are going to be doing a full realism overhaul simulation using the Electron rocket with a kick stage as well, I might add. Now, this has all been made possible by the modder Super Penguin 160, who has spent a huge amount of time making this mod as well as all other parts for the New Glenn. Now, with the help of Super Penguin 160, I've been able to make some quite accurate realism overhaul modifications, which we can use here. And you'll see here, I have got on top of our vessel, on top of the kick stage, a bunch of CubeSats, which I've got weighted almost exactly to spec as far as I could tell from all of the Electron documentation we've been able to track down. Now you'll also see here the Rutherford vacuum engine, and up here on the sides you'll see the Rutherford adopts an entirely new electric propulsion cycle using these huge lithium polymer batteries. Really quite unique, and we're very excited to see this technology evolve. Now, just because I'm a little lazy and haven't bothered configuring a launch site down here in New Zealand, I'm launching quite close to where I live, which is in Australia, and what we actually want to do is pick a launch time which is going to put ourselves in a near polar orbit. And we want to actually have it so that our satellites, our little CubeSats, are going to get sunlight 24 hours a day. So we're going to be launching into what is going to be very close to what they call a sun synchronous orbit. Now if we launch it around this time, that is going to give us a very nice orbit with constant solar energy hitting all of our wonderful little CubeSats. So similar to SpaceX, the Electron uses 9 Rutherford engines on its first stage and then a single Rutherford vacuum engine on the second stage. Very similar setup to SpaceX. Currently there is no talk about reusability with the Electron, but we're going to talk a little more about launch cost comparisons here shortly to see if the Electron really can compete with the comparatively huge size of the Falcon 9. Now on the Rocket Lab website, it's claimed here that the Rutherford engines are named after the notable New Zealand-born physicist Ernest Rutherford. He split the atom in 1917 and challenged scientific thinking of the day. So that's a little bit of history on the naming there of these engines. Each one of these engines has a thrust of 24 kilonewtons and they're an electrically driven liquid oxygen and kerosene engine, specifically designed of course for this Electron launch vehicle. Now similar to the batteries in the second stage I was showing earlier, the first stage here with the 9 engines of course needs batteries as well. The engines use electric motors and high-performance lithium polymer batteries to drive its propellant pumps, and this cuts down on a huge amount of the complex turbo machinery typically required for the gas generator cycle engines, meaning the Rutherford is simpler to build than a traditional engine and it can still achieve that similar sort of efficiency. Just coming up to main engine cutoff here now, we just need to first enable the batteries in the second stage. We didn't want to deplete those before it was necessary, so we're just turning those on there, and we can now decouple our first stage there. Getting ready now to engage our second stage engine. Now we have again the single Rutherford engine here, and the stage 1 and stage 2 Rutherford engines are pretty much identical with the exception of a larger expansion ratio nozzle for the stage 2, and that gives us the improved performance in near vacuum conditions. This essentially provides our stage 2 here with a specific impulse of around 343 seconds, and if we compare that to the specific impulse of the stage 1, that comes in at around 311 seconds. Now the launch mass of the Electron here is around 13 tons. Now that seems like a lot, but if we compare that to something like the Falcon 9, we would have to multiply that mass by around 25 to 26 times. The Falcon 9 comes in at around 334,000 kilograms. Now, looking at the actual payload capability of the Electron here, it's stated on the website again, the nominal payload to a sun synchronous orbit is around 150 kilograms. Now, if we wanted to compare that against something like the Falcon 9, that can essentially put around 22,000 kilograms, 22 tons to low Earth orbit. Now, sun synchronous orbit does take more energy because you do have to cancel out some of the rotation of the Earth, so assume a little bit less, but it's still going to be around 20 tons or so to a sun synchronous orbit. Now, obviously, that's a massive difference. Now, the Electron is around 4.9 million, I believe, last time I saw a report on this, to actually launch. And remember as well that the Electron officially became the second private company to make it to orbit on private funds, and this is only something that happened January this year, 2018. Now, we are just coming up here to the decoupling of the two spent batteries there attached to the vacuum engine, and there they have gone. Basically what happens is that those batteries are drained first, and the final battery, which is essentially encased up in the Rutherford engine here, is going to take us the rest of the way to orbit. We are getting close now to orbital velocity. We're at almost 6,000 meters per second, only 2,000 meters per second-ish to go here. Now, the last launch for Rocket Lab's Electron was just a few weeks ago, actually, in November 2018, and that mission was called It's Business Time, and that was Rocket Lab's second successful orbital launch and deployment of customer satellites. So that was super exciting. Again, I believe that over time the launch cost is going to come down. So I believe they're going to get cheaper. So I don't want to make too many comparisons here with hard values in mind. And saying that, we are just coming up to orbital velocity now. We have engine cutoff there of that second stage. Now it's basically time to decouple our kick stage. Now we'll talk a little about the kick stage, a little image of the real kick stage here up in the top right there. So I've just decoupled that now. That's going to continue on in its orbit. Now, the orbit that we have got currently here has an apoapsis very, very close to 500 kilometers in altitude. Our current periapsis sitting down between 250 kilometers and 300 kilometers. The job of that kick stage, of course, is to fully circularize our little CubeSats at that 500 kilometer altitude. But what we can do with our second stage here is boost it back to land in the ocean. There is only a very small amount of fuel remaining, so we're going to time warp up to the highest part in our orbit, the apoapsis, and we'll do a tiny burn just to drop our periapsis down into the atmosphere. You'll see there we've only got a few units of fuel left. A tiny amount of electric charge will just fire this up. And there we go. There you'll see just that tiny amount of fuel dropped us right down to a 23 kilometer periapsis. So that's easily going to burn up in the atmosphere. And while we're watching that, we'll just talk a little more about that kick stage as we come hurtling back down through the atmosphere. Very beautiful shot there actually with the sun there in the background. And what you'll also have noticed is that the sun is staying in the same place in the sky relative to our vessel here. It's not moving at all. Now that is a wonderful little effect there of that sun synchronous type of orbit, and why the little satellites hurtling around our planet in this sort of orbit are easily able to keep themselves powered at all times. So we're just watching the stage 2 here burn up quite dramatically here in the atmosphere. It's only going to last a few more seconds before it is way too hot to survive. And there we go. We're going to see parts sequentially explode here. We might actually end up with a few smaller parts surviving, because a few of the internal little cores here, they're quite robust actually. They're almost stupidly heat tolerant, such as this little thing here. I don't think we're going to burn that up, which is interesting, and it's losing its velocity super fast. So we have actually had a little probe core here survive, which we can just nicely watch spin down here into the ocean as the sun sets. There we go. So we kick back up to our kick stage, which is coming up to its apoapsis. We've just gone back in time here just a little bit, and we can now actually boost our kick stage up. Now, the engine effects on this stage weren't really working for me, or they don't produce much of a plume. So if you watch the apoapsis height and periapsis height in the top left corner, you can see I'm raising that to 500 kilometers, and I'm going to do another small correction at our apoapsis again to bring that periapsis up. So we've got a very near perfect circularized 500 kilometer orbit, and as we time warp around the planet, you can see there the sun staying at that same point in the sky. Just a beautiful orbit type for imaging or weather satellites, or even spy activity, because every time the satellite is overhead, the surface illumination angle on the planet underneath will be pretty much the same. So we are now decoupling all of our tiny little CubeSats much more rapidly than we would do in real life, just because I don't want to spend too much time just showing this one scene. But you can see here we can cram a whole bunch of CubeSats onto a payload plate. Now the Rocket Lab payload plate is roughly 1 meter in diameter, so not very big, but these CubeSats can be very, very small. And although they all start off very close together, they all have methods of maneuvering, either passively or with tiny little engines as well. So quite a lot of capability they have once they're placed in the correct orbit, and they will just naturally drift apart, so they'll end up on opposite sides of the planet quite rapidly. Beautiful shot there again with the sun there in the same spot in the sky. Meanwhile, of course, our kick stage, now empty, can do a boost backburn to drop back down into the atmosphere, leaving our space here free of the debris of this kick stage now it is spent. Now the kick stage is powered by the Curie engine, which is another engine manufactured in-house by Rocket Lab using just 3D printing, and the kick stage additionally is equipped with some cold gas reaction control systems for that precision pointing, as well as its own avionics power and communication systems, which all just exploded there in a big ball of flame. And as stated by Rocket Lab as well, they are committed to the sustainable use of space, and the kick stage here has been designed with this in mind. The Curie engine has restart capability, allowing for the deorbit of the stage, leaving nothing on orbit but customers' satellites. So wonderful for every other space company to abide by those same rules. So we're just going to check what would happen if we ejected all of the CubeSats here at the same time. See, they all fly out, and over a very short amount of time they will actually drift apart quite significantly, and in just a few days they will literally end up spaced out many thousands of kilometers apart around the Earth. So you can see just how fast they drift away from each other there. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty question here. Let's talk about the viability of these CubeSats when we compare the launch costs to something like a SpaceX Falcon 9, which is obviously one of the most cost-effective vehicles, the most cost-effective vehicle by a long shot right now. Cost per kilogram, we're talking here, is super low, and Everyday Astronaut, actually I'll leave a link in the description, did a great article about the per kilogram cost even compared to the Electron, and it actually does make the Electron look quite expensive comparatively. I think the numbers that Everyday Astronaut was coming up with was that the Electron had an impressive $22,000 per kilogram cost based on a 225 kilogram payload capability. Now, the documentation from Rocket Lab's site states a nominal payload of 150 kilograms to a sun-synchronous orbit. Now, let's meet them somewhere in the middle and say that the general cost per kilogram is around $26,000. Now, comparatively, the Falcon 9, as Everyday Astronaut mentioned here, has a stupidly cost-effective $2,700 per kilogram cost, based on a 22-ton payload and a $62 million launch cost. So here is the question: why pay 9-ish times the price per kilogram to ride on the Electron if you can get on the back of a SpaceX rocket a lot cheaper? Well, here is the thing. With Rocket Lab, you would have more flexibility to get in the exact orbit of your choice. Think of a situation, I guess, where you wanted to send, say, a 100 kilogram payload to a precise orbit. Now, you may be better off on a dedicated Electron rocket rather than piggybacking on a SpaceX launch with many other small satellites and being placed in an orbit that is not exactly where you want to be. Now, in many situations, the development and running costs of a satellite can be more expensive than the rocket itself. Let's use an example of a $10 million satellite that is near the maximum payload of the Electron rocket. In this situation, paying Rocket Lab the full launch price would make a great deal of sense if you could dictate the exact placement of that payload. Now, I don't know about you, but I also expect to see price drops from Rocket Lab as many launches are made and we see some economies of scale kick in. And more importantly for me in particular, I want to see many successful launches from a rocket company that are only a few thousand kilometers away from me, rather than quite literally the other side of the world where everything interesting is going on. So I do wish Rocket Lab the very best of luck, and also very, very best of luck for the upcoming CubeSat launch for NASA that Rocket Lab are going to be doing. It's looking like mid-December at the moment. Many of these CubeSats, of course, are part of the NASA initiative called the CubeSat launch initiative. And this enables the launch of CubeSats designed and built specifically by students, teachers, and all that sort of thing. So wonderful learning experiences, and again, really exciting to see what opportunities are becoming available now that these newer players such as Rocket Lab have come into the market. So with that, I would like to thank you everybody for making it this far in the video. If you're new to my content, please do consider subscribing and showing your support by liking and sharing. I couldn't do this without you, without all you wonderful supporters, so thanks very much. In the tile in the bottom left today, we have the BFR simulation that I did quite a few weeks ago now. Please do give it a watch if you are new to the channel. In the top right is my latest video, and in the bottom right, a video that YouTube has selected from my channel just for you by some sad little robot. Thank you for watching, and we will see you all in the next video.